That's why he is the best coach in college football right now. He is basically Nick Saban in every aspect. They are the new Alabama. That is what Ole Miss head coach Lane Kiffin had to say about Kirby Smart and the Georgia Bulldogs this week. Now, I know that soundbite, that, whatever, it's going to trigger a lot of people, right? Georgia's the next Alabama. I know the folks in Tuscaloosa are going to absolutely hate that, but it's basically the truth outside of Georgia actually playing Alabama. But that's one of the many things that Lane Kiffin had to say about the Dogs this week, as his undefeated Ole Miss Rebels coming off a really kind of an ugly win over Washington State. They get ready to head to Athens, a place where they got clobbered 2 years ago. Of course, Ole Miss got revenge on Georgia last year in Oxford. And now we've got a top 10 showdown in Athens. College game day is going to be there. And Lane Kiffin is already having fun with Kirby Smart. Joking a little bit about his weight here and there, but he had a lot to say about Kirby Smart and Gunnar Stockton, and that's what we're going to talk about. That's what we're going to talk about in today's video. So thanks for having you. But first, before we dig into all that, I want to plug Sales Hatch. Listen, if you've led sales teams before, you know that, the hardest part isn't necessarily closing the deal. It's getting your foot in the door with other businesses, and that's what Sales Hatch can do for you. They do all the stuff that you maybe don't want to know or do or don't know how to do, getting in touch with other businesses, connecting you with other prospects. They're going to handle all the emailing and the cold calling, all the stuff that you don't want to do. That's what Sales Hatch is going to do. They are a great sponsor for us. So if you're a small business looking to grow, looking to expand, trying to get your foot in the door with other companies, Sales Hatch can help you out, so make sure you give them a try. Again, they're a great sponsor of ours. They do a great job, and they help small businesses, or actually they help all businesses, so make sure you are getting in touch with Sales Hatch. But yeah, Lane Kiffin, big Kirby Smart fan. Those two are buddies, but again, he knows that his team has a real challenge in front of him. Here's more of what he had to say. Of course, you could read about this and more over on dawgpost.com, but he said, quote, "They're always a challenging team to play, especially over there, so we're going to have a great week of preparation. They have elite players and a phenomenal coaching staff led by Kirby Smart." Said he always finds a way to win games in a lot of different styles. His teams overcome a lot of adversity, and they do a great job, or he does a great job of keeping his team together. That's why he is the best coach in college football right now. And the Ohio State fans are going to get mad at that too, because Ryan Day's a really good coach. There's a lot of good coaches in college football right now. Kirby Smart is obviously still one of the best, but Lane Kiffin's out here saying that, hey, he's still the guy right now. They are still the premier program in college football. He opened his press conference talking about Georgia's record over the last 5 years, and again, their ability to win games in different styles. They can win a smash mouth 20-10 come from behind victory on the road at Auburn. They can win a shootout in overtime in Knoxville. They can win 4 straight years at home in Sanford Stadium before playing Alabama again and dropping that one. But Lane knows Kirby so well that he can kind of game plan his offense around what could be successful, but he knows it starts in the line of scrimmage. We're going to talk more about that, but I want to talk about his comments about coaching with Kirby, because he said, "I was at Alabama when Kirby took that Georgia job, and they didn't have their best year in year one, but he really turned it around in year two. And they never looked back." He said, quote, "They became the new Alabama, and he built it the exact same way." Kirby basically is Saban in almost every area. How he is, how he coaches, how he models his team, and it worked. He repeated the program and the success against everybody except Alabama. So Kirby still has that on top of him, but at the end of the day, that game's over, and this is the biggest one in front of him right now. And Ole Miss is playing really good football. They've got a quarterback playing at a high level. We're going to talk more about him in just a little bit, probably in tomorrow's video. And basically, throughout the week over on dawgpost.com, trying to have you covered, because the Dogs do have an off week before they play the Gators. So if they can beat a really strong top 5 ranked Ole Miss team at home, Georgia's going to have even more confidence going into a week off and then the second part of the season. So this one's big. This would be a gigantic win in the scale of college football, beating a top 5 team after beating a good Tennessee team on the road and after beating, yeah, they were an unranked Auburn team, but it's still an SEC road victory. And you beat them by double digits, right? So this would be another really impressive win on the record books. Even though Georgia already has one loss, they would have another outstanding win. But he was also asked, I'm talking about Lane Kiffin, was also asked about Georgia's second half surges, right? Dating even back to last year. And that's what Lane said. He said that's one of the many things they do well. But you go back to even the Alabama game last year on the road, down 28-0. Yeah, they lost the game, but they fought back because that's what they do. He said he finds a way to win a lot of games. That's why he's the best coach in the country. And he goes on, and it talks about just the energy that he brings. The players feed off that. And he's right. The players do feed off the head coach. And we saw that in Auburn with Hugh Freeze and his Auburn team. And we saw it with Kirby Smart and his Georgia team, right? The players rally around Kirby, and that's when Lane was kind of asked, who's burning more calories on the sideline between you and Kirby? They're two of the more animated coaches, and they really get into it, and their teams feed off of their energy, and they both bring it. But he said, I think Kirby's done a good job with, all of his teams talking about those second half surges. Even if you go back to the Alabama last game, you watch him on the sideline, he can't exactly tell what the score is because he's always into it, and his teams play that way. They push through adversity, and one of the hardest places to play at Auburn. They do a really good job of not panicking, and he's exactly right there. He makes a lot of points. Lane Kiffin knows this Georgia team as well as anyone, apparently, because he's sitting there and he's watching these dogs get down early in games, a lot of times by double digits. And it wouldn't surprise me if Ole Miss started the game really strong too offensively, because it feels like what we saw at Auburn, the Georgia defense was looking at, the first couple drives of plays that they weren't prepared for, and that means Auburn threw out something fresh, because we know that this staff, what they pride themselves in is game plan and preparation, and make sure their guys are prepared for anything that they've seen on tape. So if something's working on Georgia's defense, it's probably because they haven't seen it before. So game planning and preparation is key, and I expect Ole Miss to throw something new that Georgia hasn't seen before. But against Auburn, they said, okay, that's all you got. You got 2 drives worth of plays that we weren't prepared for. Now you're going back to your offense, and now you're done. Now you're not getting anything. This is what we prepared for. We know what you want to do. We know what you can't do. We know what you think you can do, and we're going to stop it. And so they will be prepared for this Ole Miss team, but they're going to have to prepare and play well and tackle against those running backs and those receivers who are really good. We're going to talk more about that. There were a couple of those guys that I covered in high school that I know can play. They didn't really get offered by Georgia. And I think Georgia fans may be overlooking, but they're a really talented team. Their quarterback's playing really well, but Georgia's is too. Of course, Lane had a lot to say about Gunnar Stockton. Here's what he said. He said he's savvy. He makes a lot of plays to keep drives alive. They've done a really good job with him, putting him in winning situations and not making bad errors to put them in tough situations. He said they're a really complete team. He said when you play Georgia, you're going to have to play really well along the line of scrimmage. He was asked about that. Is this going to be kind of an air it out, sideline to sideline game, or is it going to be one of the trenches? And he said, listen, every time you play Georgia, if you're going to beat them, you have to play well in the trenches. They play physical, and they have great length. They get the best players in the country, and Kirby, like Coach Saban, recruits size and speed, and it's always obvious, especially during warm-ups when you see them on the field. And that's exactly right, too. We were on the field prior to the Georgia-Auburn game, just watching them warm up, watching the offensive line, and Jazeer Jackson, I think Georgia's tallest and kind of biggest player overall. He's standing right next to Elias Williams, who's 6'7", 250, and he just towers over him. So if Georgia's got a lot of first guy off the bus types. They are big, they are physical, and more just about every time you watch warm-ups, Georgia's bigger than the opponent. And that was the case against Notre Dame, and it didn't matter. Usually Alabama stacks up pretty well with Georgia from a size standpoint with the roster, but Georgia's got size, so it could still be a line of scrimmage game. At the end of the day, it's going to be tight. which coach can kind of outcoach another for a couple plays here and there, and which players are going to make a contested catch or a contested pass breakup or a big tackle in the open field or a big break of a tackle, right? So which guys are going to step up and make the plays when the game's on the line? Georgia did it last week against Auburn, and they're going to have to do it again against a really good Ole Miss team. Ole Miss's defense is not great, but they've got a lot of pieces on offense, and they got a quarterback playing really, really well. Of course, Lane knows the challenge. He knows how good Georgia's team is. He knows how well coached they're going to be under Kirby Smart. This is going to be another classic Georgia, Ole Miss, Kirby Smart, Lane Kiffin battle. I think Georgia has the advantage. We're going to talk more about that over on Dawg Post, but really appreciate you all watching. Hope you learned something, and I'll see you over on dawgpost.com.